Rule 1. Ask permission, she said, laughing, and her friend joined in. That sound, that careless giggle, it echoed louder in my head than it should have. Because it wasn't just a joke, it was a public test. We were at her sister's barbecue. The backyard lights hung low over a long table filled with half-finished drinks and forced smiles. Her friends, all of them, had always treated me like a prop, something she used to prove her power. But that night, when she said it, something shifted inside me. Rule 1. I told her calmly. Pack a bag. The laughter stopped. Forks froze midair. I remember the hum of a nearby fridge, the way even the wind seemed to pause. Her face changed first, amusement sliding into disbelief, then embarrassment, and finally, fear, because she'd built her confidence on the certainty that I would never call her bluff. I stood up, grabbed my keys off the table, and didn't look back. I could feel everyone watching me, her sister, her mother, her friends, all suddenly unsure whose side they were supposed to be on. It didn't matter. For the first time in years, the silence belonged to me. Driving home, I could still see the shock in her eyes. I didn't yell, I didn't explain. I just left. My phone buzzed nonstop. Calls, texts, her friends trying to play mediators. I turned it face down on the passenger seat next to my half-empty Starbucks cup. By the time I got home, I knew she'd follow. She always did. She'd never let me have the last word, even when I stopped speaking. But that night, when the doorbell finally rang, I didn't open. I just sat in the dark, listening to her voice on the other side of the door. Soft at first, then panicked, then angry. She wasn't crying because she loved me. She was crying because she realized she'd lost control. And that was when I understood the truth. Some people only feel powerful when they can make you react. So I didn't. That silence, that stillness, became my answer. And in that moment, it scared her more than any words ever could. By morning, she had gone from angry voicemails to apologetic ones. I didn't respond to any of them. I sat at the kitchen counter, coffee in one hand, scrolling through nothing on my phone, the silence filling the room like oxygen. For years, she had filled every space, with opinions, noise, instructions. That morning, the quiet felt sacred. The sunlight crept through the blinds, catching on the new padlock I'd bought from Home Depot the night before. I hadn't planned to install it yet, but as her messages shifted from apologies to demands, I picked up my tools. It was the most peaceful sound I'd heard in months. Metal turning, screws tightening, a kind of mechanical finality that made my chest feel lighter. Around noon, her car pulled up. I watched from the living room window as she stepped out, sunglasses on, the same white coat she always wore when she wanted to look unbothered. She walked straight to the door, jiggled the handle, then froze. Her knock was sharp, impatient. When I didn't answer, she started talking, fast, emotional, rehearsed. She said it was just a joke, that I was overreacting, that she didn't mean it like that. But I remembered the look on her face when she'd said, ask permission. That wasn't a joke. That was her way of testing how far she could go. Her voice cracked, but I stayed quiet. She called my name. Then she started crying again, asking to come inside, saying we could talk. I stared at the door, my hand hovering over the knob. For a moment, habit almost won. Then I walked away. I spent the rest of the day at a small diner off Route 6. The waitress called me Han, refilled my mug without asking, and didn't notice I hadn't touched my pancakes. Outside, the sound of cars passing blended with the low hum of a neon Bud Light sign in the window. It was ordinary, painfully ordinary, but for once, I didn't feel trapped in her storm. By the time I got home, the car was gone. But on the porch sat her overnight bag, the one she used on girls' weekends. Only this time, it wasn't for a trip. There was a note tucked into the side pocket. Just 2 words, you win. But I didn't, because I wasn't playing anymore. That night, I realized she'd never understand. Leaving wasn't revenge. It was release. And the fact that she couldn't tell the difference said everything. 2 days passed before she showed up again. I'd started sleeping better, cooking for myself, even went for a drive with no destination, something I hadn't done in years. The silence had stopped feeling empty and started feeling like space to breathe. But peace has a way of drawing out those who can't stand to see you calm. It was just after sunset when I heard her car outside again. This time, she didn't knock. She just stood there, on the porch, staring at the locked door. I could see her silhouette through the glass, her shoulders slumped, phone in hand. A few seconds later, a text came through. "I just want to talk." I didn't reply. I walked to the kitchen, poured a glass of water, and leaned against the counter. I could hear her breathing through the door. She tried again, her voice lower this time. She said she'd been thinking, that maybe she'd gone too far, that she never wanted things to get like this. But there was a tone under it. Not regret, not sadness, something closer to disbelief. Like she still couldn't accept that I'd actually walked away. When she realized I wasn't going to open, she switched tactics. She started talking loud enough for the neighbors to hear. The same ones who'd once watched her humiliate me at parties, correcting me mid-sentence, laughing at my expense. I wondered what they thought now, hearing her plead on my doorstep. After a while, her voice cracked. She said she was leaving, that I'd regret this. The car door slammed, the tires screeched, and for a long time after she drove off, I stood there, staring at the quiet street. The next morning, a mutual friend called. Her name was Natalie. She'd been there that night at the barbecue. She sounded awkward, hesitant, like she didn't want to take sides but already had. She said my wife was worried about me, that maybe I'd overreacted. I told her not to worry, that everything was fine. She didn't know how to respond. Later that afternoon, I saw something on Instagram. A story. My wife, sitting at a cafe, laughing with her friends. Same tone, same fake joy. But the caption caught my attention. "Freedom looks good on me." I didn't like it. I didn't comment. But in that moment, I understood what was coming. She wasn't going to apologize. She was going to perform. And she was going to make sure everyone believed her version first. Her performance started small. A few curated photos, a quote about self-worth, then a post about leaving toxicity behind. It was subtle at first, but I knew exactly what she was doing. She was rewriting the story before anyone else could tell it. And in her version, I was the villain. I didn't respond. I didn't need to. But silence, I would soon learn, unnerved her more than confrontation ever did. By the end of that week, her friends had started reaching out, the same ones who used to laugh with her when she made me the punchline. Suddenly, they were concerned. They wanted to check in, see how I was holding up. Their messages dripped with that fake sympathy people use when they already know what they want to believe. I didn't take the bait. I kept my voice calm, polite, distant. I'd learned something powerful in that quiet house. The more peaceful you become, the louder manipulators have to scream to get attention. That Friday, I stopped by my brother's place. He and his wife had always stayed neutral, careful not to interfere. But even he had heard the rumors, that I'd lost control, that I'd snapped. I saw it in his eyes before he said a word. The seed had already been planted. Over dinner, his wife tried to steer the conversation towards safer ground. New jobs, weekend plans, the upcoming Lakers game. But I couldn't shake the feeling that I was being watched, studied, like they were waiting for me to confirm what she'd implied online. I didn't give them that satisfaction. I smiled, finished my meal, and when my brother asked if I was okay, I just said, "Better than I've been in years." That night, back home, I opened Instagram again. She'd posted another picture, a glass of red wine. The caption, "Peace hits different when you finally choose yourself." The irony almost made me laugh. Because peace wasn't something you could post about. It was something you earned, by letting go, by facing the silence she was running from. But then, something changed. A message appeared in my DMs, not from her, but from someone I didn't recognize. A neighbor. He said he'd seen her car parked outside again that evening. Said she'd been sitting there for over an hour. I looked out the window, and sure enough, there she was. Engine off. Lights out. She wasn't there to talk. She was there to see if I'd still look out the window. And when I didn't move, she finally drove away. The next morning, the quiet didn't feel peaceful anymore. It felt expectant, like the air before a storm. I made coffee, turned on the news for background noise, and tried to act like nothing had changed. But something had. She'd crossed from pride into obsession, and I knew from experience that was a dangerous shift. Around noon, I got a text from her again. No greeting, no apology, just a sentence that made my stomach tighten. "I left something in the house." I stared at the screen for a long time. Then another message followed. "It's important. Please." I didn't reply. Instead, I checked the cameras I'd installed the week before. The ones she didn't know about. It was a precaution, something I'd done out of instinct more than fear. Now, as the feed came up on my phone, I saw her standing at the edge of the driveway, pacing. She looked lost, not angry, but I'd seen that look before. It was the face she wore before she twisted any situation into sympathy. After 20 minutes, she gave up and drove away. I thought that was the end of it, until an hour later, I saw a familiar post pop up on her page. A photo of a key. My house key. The caption read, "Sometimes you have to let go of things that no longer open doors." It spread fast. Comments, emojis, messages from friends. The sympathy rolled in like clockwork. I didn't comment, didn't defend myself. Let them talk. Because I'd already realized the truth. People believe whatever version makes the loudest noise. But later that night, the noise came to my doorstep. My neighbor, the same one who'd warned me before, knocked just after 10. He looked uneasy, said she'd been talking to people in the neighborhood, asking questions about me, trying to find out if I was seeing anyone. I thanked him, closed the door, and stood there in the hallway for a long time. There was no anger left, just a dull kind of disappointment. In her, in the years I'd wasted trying to keep the peace with someone who only understood control. That night, I opened my laptop and started drafting a message, not to her, but to my lawyer. I wasn't going to fight her online. I was going to end it for real, quietly, legally, finally. But as I hovered over send, my phone buzzed again. This time, it wasn't her. It was Natalie. And her message was short, but it hit harder than anything my wife had ever said. "She's not taking this well. You should know. She's planning something." I reread Natalie's message 3 times, trying to decide if it was concern or warning. "She's planning something." Those words pulsed in my head long after I put my phone down. Planning what? To fix things? To hurt me? With her, the line between the two had always been blurry. The next day, I decided to move differently. Calm, deliberate, invisible. I didn't want confrontation, but I wasn't about to let her write my ending for me. I drove downtown, met my lawyer, and signed the initial paperwork. Divorce, restraining order, property split. Each signature felt like peeling her hands off my life one finger at a time. When I got home, her car was parked at the corner again. Not directly outside. Far enough to pretend it was coincidence, close enough for me to notice. I didn't look in her direction. I went inside, locked the door, and sat in the living room, waiting for the next move. It didn't take long. That night, my phone buzzed again. A video this time. No text, no caption, just a short clip of me, recorded through the window, sitting in that exact spot. I froze, the screen lighting up my face. I looked around instinctively, scanning the dark glass, the street beyond it. Nothing. Then, another message. "If you can't talk to me, maybe you'll listen to everyone else." The next morning, I understood what she meant. People at work looked at me differently. Whispers in the hallway. Someone had forwarded screenshots, fake ones, edited messages that made me look like the villain she'd been hinting at all along. It was subtle but effective. She'd planted just enough poison to make people question me. I didn't react. That's what she wanted. I just gathered my things, left early, and drove out to the lake, the one we used to visit when we still thought love was something we could fix. The air was cold, still. I sat on the hood of my truck, watching the water shift under the fading light. And for the first time, I didn't feel angry. I felt detached, like I was finally outside of her storm, looking in. When I got home, I deleted her number, blocked her on everything, and unplugged my phone. I poured a drink, sat on the couch, and stared into the quiet. But quiet, I was learning, has a way of attracting the things you're trying to escape. And around midnight, there was a sound at the door, slow, deliberate knocking. 3 times. Then silence. The knock was soft, but it carried through the house like a pulse. I didn't move. I just sat there in the dark, holding my breath, waiting for it to come again. But it didn't. Just those 3, perfectly spaced knocks. Then silence. I stood, careful not to make a sound, and moved toward the door. The peephole showed nothing, just an empty porch and the faint reflection of the streetlight across the road. Still, I waited. My mind kept replaying the video she'd sent, the way she knew exactly where I sat, what angle to film from. She'd been here before. Maybe she never really left. I turned on the porch light. Nothing. Just the faint outline of tire marks on the curb. My pulse slowed, but not by much. I double-checked every lock in the house, pulled the curtains shut, and sat back down. The clock read 12:47. Sleep wasn't an option, so I poured another drink, Jameson this time, and tried to drown the noise in my head. The hum of the refrigerator, the tick of the clock, my own heartbeat filling the silence. It felt like waiting for something I didn't want to arrive. By morning, I convinced myself it had just been a prank. Maybe a delivery driver at the wrong address. But then I saw it. A small white envelope under the doormat. No name, no stamp, just folded once. Inside was a photo. A printout of that same video still, me sitting on the couch, phone in hand, unaware I was being watched. On the back, in her handwriting, were 5 words. You can't ignore me forever. I didn't panic. Not anymore. I just felt tired. This wasn't love or anger anymore. It was obsession bleeding into desperation. I called the police. Explained the messages, the videos, the photo. The officer listened, nodded, and said they'd file a report, maybe add a patrol near the house for a few days. But I knew how that went. Unless she crossed a line, there wasn't much they could do. That night, I left the lights off. Sat by the window, watching the street through a slit in the curtain. Hours passed. Nothing. Until 2:03 a.m. Her car rolled up to the curb again. Headlights off, slow, deliberate. She didn't get out. Just sat there, engine idling, facing the house. I stood there, watching. And for the first time, I didn't feel fear. I felt something colder, resolve. She sat there for what felt like an eternity. The dull hum of her engine, the only sound breaking through the night. The streetlight flickered once, then again, casting her car in flashes of pale gold and shadow. I watched from behind the curtain, my hand resting on the cold window frame, every muscle locked in place. She didn't move, didn't even turn her head, just waited. After 20 minutes, she finally drove off, slow and deliberate, like she wanted me to know this wasn't over. I waited another 10 minutes before stepping outside. The air was sharp, filled with the kind of silence that follows after something wrong has passed through. On the curb where her car had been, I saw the faint outline of her tires again. Same spot, same pattern, like she'd claimed the space. The next morning, I couldn't shake the image of her just sitting there. It wasn't a threat anymore. It was an invitation. A dare. I went through my day on autopilot, coffee untouched, my phone buzzing with unread texts from Natalie. I didn't answer, because deep down, I knew what came next wasn't something I could talk my way out of. By evening, the tension in my chest had shifted into something else, determination. I checked the camera feeds, double-checked the locks, and turned off every light in the house. Then I sat in the dark, waiting. Midnight came and went. Nothing. Then, at 1:27 a.m., I saw it. Headlights creeping down the street again, slow, familiar. She parked in the same spot. Only this time, she got out. She moved quietly, wearing a black hoodie pulled over her head. I could barely make out her face under the glow of the street lamp. She wasn't carrying anything. No bag, no phone. Just herself. She stood at the end of the driveway, staring at the house. My house. Our old house. And then she smiled. Not the kind of smile you give someone you love. The kind you wear when you think you've already won. I didn't open the door. I didn't move. I let her stand there in the cold, waiting for a reaction she wasn't going to get. After a minute, she turned and walked away, not to her car, but toward the side of the house, where the cameras didn't reach. I moved fast then, crossing the hall and unlocking the drawer where I kept the spare phone, the one connected to the security alarm. My thumb hovered over the panic button, and then I heard it, the sound of the back door handle turning. The handle moved slowly, like she wanted me to hear it. I froze mid-step, every sound in the house collapsing into silence. My pulse was a drum in my ears. The faint metal click echoed once, then again. Then, stillness. She was testing me, waiting to see if I'd react. I stayed perfectly still. Seconds dragged into minutes. Finally, a faint scraping sound came from the kitchen window. She was trying another way in. I moved toward the counter, my footsteps soundless on the hardwood floor. My hand brushed against the cool edge of my phone, but I didn't call anyone. Something in me wanted to see how far she'd go. The curtain shifted. A shadow passed by the glass. Then I saw her face, pale in the moonlight, eyes wide and unblinking. She was watching me. Through the window, I stood frozen, caught between fear and fury. For a heartbeat, neither of us moved. Then she smiled again, slow, calm, and mouthed the words, "You miss me." The glass between us felt paper thin. My hand trembled against the counter, not from fear, but from the weight of years of everything unsaid. I reached for the phone, ready to hit the alarm, when a sharp crash erupted from the back door. She'd found another way. I darted through the hallway, catching the faint glow of the porch light spilling across the floor. Her silhouette was inside now, a black shape moving soundlessly through my home. The same home we'd built together. The one I'd learned to make quiet again after she left. She stopped in the middle of the living room. My living room. Her voice came low and measured. "You can't just erase me." I didn't answer. For the first time, I saw her clearly. Not the woman I loved, but the version left behind after love turned to something else. Her hair was damp from the night air, her eyes hollow, her hands trembling like she wasn't sure what she'd come here to do. I took one step forward, not out of courage, but because I was done running. "You need to leave," I said, my voice steady. For a long moment, she just stared at me, breathing hard. Then something in her expression cracked, some tiny flicker of realization that whatever power she thought she had was gone. She turned without a word and walked toward the door. Her footsteps were soft, almost fragile. But just before leaving, she stopped, her hand on the frame. "You'll call me," she whispered. "You always do." Then she was gone. I locked the door, exhaled for the first time in hours, and stood in the quiet wreck of my living room. The air felt heavy, but clean. And for the first time, I knew exactly what I had to do next. The silence after she left wasn't peaceful. It was too sharp, too aware of itself, like the house was holding its breath along with me. Every creak of the floorboards, every faint hum from the refrigerator felt like her presence still lingered, invisible but near. I stood in the middle of the room, staring at the faint marks her shoes had left on the hardwood. I could have called someone. The police, a friend, anyone. But I didn't. Because part of me knew this wasn't over just yet. I went to the kitchen, poured a glass of water, and caught my reflection in the window. The dark circles under my eyes looked deeper than before, the exhaustion carved into my face like something permanent. But there was something else too, a strange steadiness, a cold clarity that hadn't been there for months. At dawn, I packed a single bag, just enough for a few days. I wasn't running. I was reclaiming the quiet she'd taken from me. I turned off my phone, slid it into a drawer, and walked out without looking back. By the time I reached the cabin 2 hours north, the sun was spilling over the treeline. The air smelled of pine and wet earth. No sounds, no headlights, no messages, just silence, the kind that presses against your thoughts until they finally stop shouting. For the first time, I slept. Really slept. When I woke, it was already dark. My head felt clearer, my body lighter. I made coffee, sat on the porch, and let the night stretch out before me. The stars were endless. Somewhere in the distance, a single owl called. I felt almost human again. Then the phone on the porch table lit up. My backup phone. The one I hadn't given anyone. A single text appeared across the screen. It read, "You left without saying goodbye." No name. No number. Just the words. I didn't move. Didn't respond. I just stared at the message until the screen dimmed and went black. Then I powered off the phone, placed it face down, and looked out into the dark woods. Maybe she'd never stop trying to find me. Maybe people like her didn't know how to let go. But I finally understood something. The power she had over me wasn't fear anymore. It was choice. And for the first time in a long time, the choice was mine. The wind picked up, whispering through the trees like it was carrying the last of her voice away. I sat there, calm, unmoving, as the night swallowed everything but the sound of my breathing. And that's when I finally felt free.